Hi everybody, Cheryl and Lady coming to you from the Ladies Garden and Home, and today it's a beautiful end of September day, and I'd like to show you on a quick little tour of the garden and see what it looks like in the early fall. I'm going to show you the beauty and the beasts. So I hope you join us.
What you doing, sweet girl?
Before we get started, I want to say a very heartfelt thank you for you, my subscribers, for getting me to reach over 100 subscribers this week. I really appreciate it, and I hope we're starting a really nice community of gardeners here. If you're not familiar with me, if this is the first time to my channel, my name is Cheryl. I garden here in Southwest Connecticut in Zone 7A with my puppy Lady, who's not really a puppy anymore, but she's my good girl. And I have a very small backyard, but I've fit a lot of plants in here, and I really try to work hard to make myself as self-sufficient in the vegetable and herb department. So September is a really kind of a busy month, but it's more of a month of transition, because we're going from the real super heat of August in the summer and the summer vegetables to introducing and turning over and succession planting our cool weather crops, things like our broccolis and cauliflowers and cabbages and that kind of thing. So come on and join me. I'm going to just go around the garden and then I'm going to go up on the deck, okay? Here we are at the mint. And that's been here for many years, way before I moved here, and it got a little scrawny from the heat. We've had a very hot and extremely dry summer. It was very unusual for us to have this kind of drought, really prolonged weeks without any kind of rain. I've done my best in keeping up with the watering, but some of the plants nevertheless has struggled. The eggplants, for example, they weren't as hardy as the ones that I had last year. In fact, I've only gotten one eggplant off of each one of these plants. But now that the cooler weather has come in, and by cooler I mean it's probably in the 70s during the day and the mid 60s at night, they've started flowering again. So I don't know if there's time left before the frost comes in to get any more eggplant, but we're going to leave them be and see. And I have here a whole bunch of carrots. Some have matured and I've pulled them. Some got a ways to go. And the leeks are over here. I don't really have access over here. But leeks are those kind of things that don't need much tending, so we're just letting them grow. And I didn't mean to pass by my cucumbers, but as you can see, they're pretty much done for the season, and I will be pulling these out in a couple of days. Over here is my lavender row, and I did trim that. It was really hanging over the bed at the bottom here, probably interfering with the growth of some of these plants. I have here echinacea. I have more carrots in here. They're a bit of a wild mess. And some nasturtium. Turning around and showing you the center bed here, it's where I've had my slicing tomatoes this summer. And basil. Carrots are growing. Tomatoes are just, some of them are finally starting to blush up a little bit. It's been very frustrating. I think the heat set them back, but they are starting to turn color. So I have hopes that before the frost, these will ripen, although I have not been picking them ripe. I've been picking them kind of mostly ripe, because the squirrels have either taken a bite out or completely removed them from the tomato plants. I find them everywhere in the garden, and it's very, very frustrating waiting so long to get some ripe tomatoes only to get robbed by a squirrel. In this bed, I also have an artichoke growing. The celery I had cut way, way back, and I harvested the seeds after they went to flower, and I wasn't sure if they were going to come back or not, and they have. So that's exciting. These overwintered from last year, so these plants are over a year old now. Here's a small tomato plant that I actually had taken a side branch from one of the mature cherry tomato plants, and I just stuck it in here. And I did that in a couple of places. Some of them worked. This one did. You can see it's got little tomatoes on it, but some didn't. So you can get some late season tomatoes. Also in here, I planted in some Brussels sprouts. They're little, hoping they'll grow quickly, and some broccoli rabe. We've got some turnips growing, some carrots, they're babies, some more turnips over there. And I also planted a Romanesco broccoli. That grew, I had one here last year and it grew huge. I overwintered that one and harvested, I think in May, and it was huge by the time that I did that. So I'm hoping that's going to be enough room for them. So my plans for the winter with this bed is anything that is still pretty viable by the time the first freeze comes. The brassicas in here and the celery will handle a frost no problem. So will the dill and the carrots and the turnips. But as we get into really much colder weather, what I'm going to be doing is putting some protection over them, and like I did last year, and hoping to overwinter them. Over in this bed, it's a bit of a mishmash of flowers, but I also have a butternut squash growing. And if you follow this up this way, past St. Francis, this vine here is spaghetti squash. It just decided to grow up the tree and over the clothesline here, and here's the little spaghetti squash. Just hanging around like a Christmas ornament. Over here, this is a chrysanthemum plant that I popped into a hole that my dog had dug trying to get to the, I don't know, rabbit underneath the deck here. But it's got little buds on it, so hopefully it'll flower this year. Pansies I moved out from the shade. I had them in the shade pretty much all summer just to protect them from the real heat. Pansies don't like heat, but they're really taking off nicely now. This plant is 2 years old, and I have just kept it outside, and it's overwintered. Rosebush getting kind of leggy. I think it probably needs to be transplanted in some, I don't know, some TLC. Here's a hibiscus that is a very pretty plant, but I never got any flowers. Sometimes I heard that they only bloom in the, they don't start blooming until the second year. This one's too big for me to bring inside. It's a tropical plant. It wouldn't overwinter even if I had it, protected under cover. So I think I'm just going to start next year, maybe in a smaller pot so that I can overwinter it inside the house. Over here on this side of the deck, the butterfly bush is looking nice. It recuperated from getting really, really dried out when I went out of town for 4 days. It was just 4 days, but very hot days. And it almost died. The dahlia is coming back, It likes the cooler weather too. It went through kind of a dormancy in the heat of the summer. But look at the color. Oh, just gorgeous. The artichoke over here, I'm going to try to overwinter this too, because I heard that in certain zones they are perennials. I don't know if they hit the 7 zone, but I'm going to try by just giving it a good wrapping and covering. And the gladiolas. Yeah, the rose bush. It was blooming. I had to deadhead them. I'm hoping to get some more roses. It's a beautiful orange blush rose. Zinnias popping up here and there in the garden. Oh, and here's a fig named Sue. This was a gift from a good friend of mine, and I wanted to show you because it's very exciting. Got a little baby fig. That's cute. Another house plant I'll bring in soon. I don't know what kind of plant this is, but I do love it. Coming around to this side, here is where I direct sowed some radishes and fennel. This is the fennel coming up. Looks a little bit like carrots or dill. And rutabaga. Those seedlings are rutabagas. In this long bed here, I had pumpkin earlier this summer. I harvested a pumpkin and I just removed the plant after that. It wasn't looking very healthy. And then I had some butternut squash, which I harvested last week. So it's just the vine right now. There is a flower. I don't think there's any time for another butternut squash to develop before the frost. But I'm keeping the vine there as a living mulch to hopefully confuse and protect my little seedlings that I just planted yesterday, which are the sprouting calabrese. They're a type of broccoli that doesn't form like a middle head. It gets side shoots. So I popped them in here between the squash, and then towards the front here are beets that I planted, some in April, some in May, some in June. So they're at different phases of maturing. But I did harvest a nice size one yesterday, and I roasted it for dinner. It was so good. I roasted it with one of the butternut squashes. Yum. Coming over here to this side of the fence is a mishmash of, these are my sauce tomatoes. So we've got a speckled paste tomato, the San Marzano, which have been really producing this year. I'm quite impressed with them. They're smaller, if you can see. They don't grow as tall. I guess they're a semi-determinate. They're smaller than some of the other tomato plants, but they have been putting off so much fruit. And unfortunately, the squirrels have been getting to them. But I have been, like I said, harvesting them really at this stage right here, just to keep the squirrels from, because they don't eat the whole thing. They'll take a bite and then just leave them. So in here I've got my zucchini. I have my golden crookneck squash. I've planted purple sprouting broccoli in here, which is supposed to overwinter, so I'm going to go ahead and cover them before the freeze sets in. Borage started growing back. I had actually thought this plant was dead, so I cut it back and it grew back. More of the purple sprouting broccoli. I've got some carrots growing in here. Lots of marigolds, as you can see. A lot of these were volunteers. It made quite an interesting hedge. and I kind of liked the way it looked, so I thought that was pretty cool, and I left them. Calendula. I've been harvesting the calendula. I actually made a tea out of this and some echinacea, some lemon balm, and chamomile the other weekend because I was feeling very sick. And I don't know, I felt better in a couple of days. My fever was gone. So that was interesting. A little herbal medicinal tea really kind of did the trick. This is golden gooseneck squash. I actually harvested 2 of them already. Cooked some up. Here are the cherry tomatoes. I've decided I miss my red cherry tomatoes. As much as these are delicious, the sun gold, the yellow orangey ones, and the midnight snackers, which are like that black looking tomato, they're delicious, don't get me wrong, but I miss my regular red cherry tomatoes that don't take long to ripen. They come along and can do a lot with them. These honestly don't make it out of the garden. Once they're ripe, I just pop them in my mouth. Oh, hello. Charlotte looks like she's having some dinner. You know, I used to get so freaked out by spiders in the yard, but this time of year especially, when, you know, you just see these huge spider webs and very large spiders, they're a really, really important part of the garden. It really is, I think, part of the cycle. They take care of some of the bugs that you really don't want in the garden. I don't know about you, but I have never noticed a pollinator in a spider web. It's kind of weird. It's almost like they made an agreement. Well, I promised I'd show you the beasts, and this is what happens to the sunflowers after they bloom. And I don't know. I thought it might be a good idea to turn them into posts to support the peas that I planted. Peas aren't doing too well either, but they look kind of ugly. I'm going to pop their heads off soon. Here's the pepper bed with a beautiful zinnia plant coming up the middle here. And I have about 4 different varieties of peppers in here, and I've been getting them. They were slow for a while. In the middle of the heat, they slowed down and they had stopped putting out flowers. But now we've got some more peppers coming up, which is nice. We've got some jalapenos here. We've got a cherry pepper. We've got bell peppers. Great stuff pepper, it's called. But in here, I also put in cabbage. They're tiny little seedlings. And I put in some more Romanesco broccoli in the middle there. And lots of marigolds here. If you notice, I have some cardboard down. What I'm trying to do is kill off the crabgrass, and then in the spring, I'm going to put down some white clover because I'm really, really tired of trying to mow the crabgrass. So I'm going to go for the natural thing. Anyway, coming over here in the black bags are the cauliflower. They've grown quite a bit since I planted them. I'm keeping this cloth over them in the hopes of keeping out the white cabbage butterflies. For the most part, it's working, but I still am getting a little bit of damage. But I guess it's better than nothing. I also noticed, and I don't know why, there's a lot of weeds in here, so I have to come in here and weed the broccoli and the cauliflower. They must have just blown in. These are larger bags, so so sometimes I put 2 in at the same time. Hopefully it'll be enough room. Coming over here, I've got more cherry tomatoes. And also, it looks like I've got some of my sauce tomatoes in here too. I either mismarked them or I just shoved them in. I don't remember, but anyway, they're ripening. And the potatoes that I put in, the 2 bags of potatoes, I didn't plant these until July with the hopes that I'm going to have them ready to harvest around December, around Christmas. And then here is the mishmash of beans and corn. This was the Three Sisters garden that I did a video about back when I planted it. I think it was in May. But as you can see, it's just turned into a big bean trellis, which is fine because I did plant a lot of beans and they are starting to finally really come in. They were very, very late this year. Also, I think because of the heat. But we've got some now. I've been harvesting maybe like a handful every day. Here's the old corn. It's going to look really creepy at Halloween, I think. And the part of the Three Sisters that I really didn't find work out at all was putting in some squash underneath there. The squash is supposed to provide some living mulch underneath the tall things, but I think the tall things just blocked out the light and didn't allow them to grow, so I'm not going to do that again. Beans crawling all the way up to the deck. Coming up to the deck, here's the green stalk, and I'll show you what I've planted and how they're coming along. We've got some arugula, some spinach. The basil is looking like it's on its way out. New Zealand spinach. It's looking a little tired now, but I'll tell you, this spinach was an incredible producer all season long. And I can't tell you how many meals I've cooked off of it. So I really, really liked it. We've got some chard, some opal basil, tiny spinach, some sage, little thing of parsley, some chard growing, and some lettuce growing back where I had cut it out at the root, but it keeps wanting to come back. Some dill, some cilantro, more chard, more basil, borage back there. I've been rotating this every day. I will say about the green stalk, you really, really have to keep on top of watering it. In the heat of the summer, I was dumping 4 gallons a day into the top of it just to keep everything hydrated. Coming over here, we've got the blueberries, and marigolds are kind of tired now. Strawberries. And the strawberries got some kind of fungal disease on them. Pardon my Band-Aid. They got some kind of fungal disease on them, and so I've been using a copper fungicide, and I think it's helping with the new growth, and I don't see it spreading. But I also had to take off a whole bunch of the diseased leaves. And I don't mulch these, I throw them out. Geraniums, still loving it, still loving life. Then over here, the herb containers, this basil is on its way out. So I underplanted some bunching onions. And we've got the thyme, oregano, lemon balm, parsley. We've got some cilantro coming up in the middle there. Chives, more thyme, rosemary, more oregano, catnip, more thyme, and more catnip. And I've also got coming up here some more cilantro and some more parsley. And the plan with the herb containers that I have that are in the middle here, that are sitting up top, I'm going to move those into the mini greenhouse over the winter. They're hardy, and I think that the mini greenhouse is just going to give them a little bit more protection. And then in these bottom containers here, which there's a lot of them, there's 6, 12, 18 of these, I'm going to have spinach. So I planted the spinach about 2 weeks ago underneath the marigolds, and I cut back most of the marigolds. I left a little for color. And then I'm going to be planting a variety of spinach called Giant Winter, and that doesn't even germinate unless the days are 50 degrees or lower. So it's really a very hardy spinach, but it's, believe it or not, it's end of September and it's still too early to plant that. The ginger is impressing me with its beauty. I'm very happy. This was just supermarket ginger that I cut into 3 pieces and planted. Ginger is tropical, so it's not going to overwinter even in the greenhouse. So I'm going to bring this inside the house and keep it on my sunny window throughout the winter. And my plan is then to move it back out and then transplant it in the spring. And hopefully that'll be, because it takes a really long time from sprouting to harvest. It's like a 10-month growing cycle. So that's the plan with the ginger. The leeks are coming along. They're not ready to be transplanted yet. Some lettuce. I'm going to just keep them in this flat. The flat has some pretty big size, sections here, pots. So I'm going to keep this in the mini greenhouse this year too. I did do some succession yesterday, just filling up some of the holes. They haven't started coming up yet. It's a little too early. I lifted the cloth here where I have my seedlings set up. I keep them under the cloth here for the same reason I do the broccoli and the cauliflower with the cloth over it back down in the garden, to keep those cabbage moths off, which I think has been working pretty nicely. I have some kale back there. I've got some Waltham broccoli, a couple of more Brussels sprout plants, and a couple of more broccoli raw plants. Over here we have the paprika plant, which I harvested. It had 3 paprikas on it. I don't know if I'm going to get any more, but I dried that, and I'm going to make paprika powder out of it. Well, that wasn't easy to say. This is my basil plant that I overwintered inside last year. So this is going on its 2nd year. I'm going to bring it inside again. And here's Mancini the peperoncini. Still going to town. And it's just a little bag of carrots. The beginning of fall, and it's going to be a great couple more weeks. I feel it. I know it. We're going to have some beautiful weather coming. Beginning of October / early fall garden tour. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe and share this with your friends if you think they may be interested. And from the Ladies Garden and Home, enjoy your gardening journey. Bye. Say goodbye, lady. Lady says goodbye.